With today's fast-paced and materialistic American lifestyle, there is a growing awareness of the need to recognize our spiritual nature and integrate it at all levels of our daily lives. Many of us have difficulty defining spirituality, even though the desire to reconnect with our inner spiritual life is one of humanity's deepest and most heartfelt longings. Welcome to Spirituality in America, a series of programs which investigates the nature of spirituality. This series presents a thought-provoking perspective on spirituality as viewed by one of the world's most respected and authoritative experts on the subject, Parthasarathi Rajagopalachari, affectionately known as Chari. Chari is the spiritual guide and master of the practice of Sahaj Marg. The master's duty is to awaken and nurture the divinity in all who seek such assistance. Hi, I'm Betsy Barlow.
And I'm Rick Pivorato. Thank you for joining us. What is spirituality? Spirituality is the science of the soul. The soul, or the divinity within each one of us, has no physical attributes such as color, race, or sex, and so spirituality transcends all of these. In fact, even our program's title, Spirituality in America, is somewhat limiting because spirituality is the birthright of all humanity and cannot be confined by physical or geographical limits in any way. Also, the concepts and frameworks of religions, however useful and necessary they are, can be confining when placed in the larger context of spirituality. This is why in Sahaj Marg it is said that where religion ends, spirituality begins.
Sahaj Marg is a way of life designed to give the direct experience of realization in the midst of daily life. Family life in one's own home is an excellent means of learning real lessons about sacrifice and love. Sahaj Marg suggests that the highest spiritual attainments can be realized by anyone, at any time, in any place.
On today's program, we'll be watching the first part of an interview with Parthasarathi Rajagopalachari. He lives in Madras, India, and travels the world spreading the teachings of his master, Chandra, the founder of Sahaj Marg. During this interview in Georgia, Chari answers a wide variety of questions about spirituality and meditation.
Now let's join Marcia Thompson and Kevin Kirby in Georgia as they interview Chari. He tells us about his background and experience in spirituality, and then speaks about God, love, morality, and the difference between religion and spirituality. He then speaks about the goal of human life and about the process of unbecoming, which allows us to move on to higher stages of spiritual evolution, a journey of the soul which never ends.
Chari, we welcome you to the United States on this return visit, and we thank you for coming today to answer some of our questions about meditation and spirituality in America.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here with you.
Thank you. We thought that our audience would like to know a little about you before we start, so could you tell us how long you've been teaching spirituality and meditation?
I've been practicing this for about 40 years now. As far as teaching is concerned, I don't really think I'm a teacher in that sense. More of a guide than a teacher. We help people to do things rather than do things for them.
And that's the difference between
Yes.
a teacher and a guide. What did you do before devoting yourself full time to this pursuit of guiding?
Well, like everybody else, I started on a course of religious instruction in the Hindu religion. I read some of the basic texts like the Bhagavad Gita, parts of the Vedas. Then I involved myself in a process of initiation into the Brahmin part of the Hindu religion. That entailed a daily recitation of the Vedas in the morning and the evening, wearing a particular form of the dhoti, which goes around the waist. And that lasted about, I think, 4 years. But before that, I had already started meditation when I was a student in Calcutta. So even during this process of religious practice, I used to meditate by myself, but without proper guidance, just from books, reading about it and trying to do it. It landed me in a substantial mess, and therefore I had to look for a guide. And eventually I found my master, Sri Ramchandraji of Shahjahanpur.
Thank you.
First of all, let's say I believe in God. I go to church on Sunday. I think of myself as a spiritual person. Can you please tell us what is spirituality?
Well, if you don't mind my saying so, this phrase, I believe in God, is highly suspect. I mean, for a person who's practicing spirituality, to say, I believe in God. I mean, God is not something to be believed in. We believe that in spirituality, one must love God. Because in all religions, we say God is love. So if God is love, I don't have to believe in Him, I just have to reciprocate that love. And if He loves me, there's no question of reward and punishment. You see the difference, basic difference between religion and spirituality. My master used to say that religion has two instruments: temptation and fear. Temptation of hell, fear of heaven. I mean, the whole business of ethics and morality is based on fear and temptation. Whereas in spirituality, there is neither reward nor punishment. There is neither hell nor heaven. But there is the possibility held out of our having to do something by which we can evolve into the higher kingdom, which Christ calls the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of God. And Christ also says, my kingdom is not of this world. So we don't expect any rewards on this world, in this physical mortal existence. Nor is it a reward. It is a stage of evolution which we like, which we achieve, which we grow into, like a child grows into adulthood and into old age, naturally. It doesn't have to do anything about it.
So it's not just a belief, it's a process.
It is a process of growing into a divine state of being. And then we understand that, well, God has always been with us, we have always been with God, and the separation has been created, if I am permitted to say so, by the sense of religion which puts God as something far away from us, somewhere in heaven, we are here, hell down there below, as if we are suspended between a heaven above and a hell below. And anything can cut us and put us into hell, or somebody up there has to pull us up.
Let's say that I have a good life already, a good material life. Why should I want spirituality?
Question is whether we want spirituality or whether we should want spirituality at all. It's not a question of wanting. It's like a man saying, I'm very healthy, why should I breathe? Why should I eat? Why should I defecate, for instance? Health depends on these things. Similarly, a good material existence may be the result of what we have done in the past. A good education, a good upbringing, a good moral education. These give us what we call successes in this life. But is it enough? There is something which unites all of humanity, sick or healthy, rich or poor, educated or stupid. And that is our mortality. And the whole thrust of spirituality is to get out of this mortal state into a divine state. So our terrestrial conditions as such have no bearing on the need for spirituality. In fact, I object to this phrase, need for spirituality, because it's not a need. It is something of an evolutionary force with which I have either to go by cooperating with it or be left behind.
So the spiritual being evolves just like a physical being evolves, or there's a similarity or a parallel between the physical evolution that most of us are familiar with and the spiritual?
Well, we have this idea of the physical evolution, starting from the amoeba or whatever it is to what we are today. That is more or less what I prefer to call a morphological evolution, change in forms. Whether we are an amoeba or we are a human being, the life inside is the same. Nobody yet has discovered whether the life in a chicken and the life in a goat and the life in a human being are different or the same. Spirituality says that life is the same. The form in which that life is present on earth is different. Therefore, spirituality says it doesn't matter what you are, doesn't matter who you are. Hitherto, up to the human level, you have evolved naturally, spontaneously, by the thrust of evolutionary forces. We know dinosaurs have been left behind, for instance. Many forms of life have been left behind which did not evolve. But that does not mean life does not evolve. So in a sense, like we leave this body at death, what we call death. Where does life go? Surely into another form? I mean, this is subject to debate. Some people will say no, some people will say yes. But spirituality says, if you look back to when you were born, where did you come from? The body, yes. Medical science, biological science, they offer you an explanation that there is a cell, there is an egg, the two come together, there is this process of conception and you are born. Where does the life come from? So as life comes into us at birth or at the moment of conception, life has to go somewhere when we are finished with this mortal existence. Spirituality says, quo vadis, not domini, but you. Where are you going? Where is your life headed for? And spirituality says there is a definite goal. It says your goal is the original home from which you came, the divine home which we left, which in Christianity they call, I think they call the fall, you see. Adam and Eve and all this theological business of Christianity. Hinduism has some parallel stories too. So has, I think, so have other religions. But that we are dealing with the past. The future is, as we have come down from above to this level, we have to go back from this level back to our original home, which you may call heaven, which you may call infinite, which you may call central region, as we do in our system of meditation. And for this, there is a process of evolution, which my master used to call not so much evolution as devolution. Because we have become something. And we have to unbecome by removing the layers of what we have added to our thinking processes and our active processes, and release the soul which has been bound in this body. So actually, it is an evolutionary process involving unbecoming of what we are. Not the sense of unbecoming in the way in which it is used in English as this is unbecoming, that is unbecoming. No, unbecoming, like unraveling. So it is actually an evolutionary process by throwing off things that you have acquired, characteristics, perhaps character itself at a higher stage of evolution. Because God cannot be said to have a character.
And that sort of triggered a question, and that was, is that can a person have a good material life, be successful, have a good job and all of that, and still be spiritual?
Well, you know, spirituality says when you are a truly spiritual being, you must be perfect in everything that you do. Perfection. Not in the sense of a good life or a rich life, but a perfect life. A perfect life that if I do something, it is done as nearly perfect as a human being can do it. Suppose you become a surgeon, you will be as near a perfect surgeon as possible. Suppose she becomes an artist, as nearly a perfect artist as possible. Because there are creative forces which are hidden in our body, in ourselves, I won't say body, in our life, which have not been released because they are blocked by what we call grossness, accumulations of guilt, accumulations of culpability, accumulations of these ideas of vice and virtue, which block creativity. And even the best artist you can think of has been blocked. You know, when you think of style in music and arts, each one has his own signature, as it were. Why do they have to create a particular pattern all the time? You should not be able to recognize a painting and say this is a Picasso, this is a Cezanne, this is a Rembrandt. You should not be able to. So spirituality says, as long as there is an author to a book, or an artist who can put a signature to a painting, it is a limited scope of creativity. It is from the human level. At the spiritual level, there is no more a creator. The ultimate creator takes over. His powers flow through us. And what results, I dare not sign as mine, because I wasn't even conscious when I painted it.
So the artist no longer considers that his work is merely what is pass through him.
Yes, I mean, like even in a mundane situation, like when a man and a woman have a baby, you can't say, I made this baby. You can say, I had this baby, but not made it. So when you cannot even make your own babies, how can you make things which are so highly creative that they almost reflect the divine in them?
And maybe why in this country we refer to it as babies and children as being gifts from heaven sometimes.
Yes, they are always gifts from heaven. The life comes from outside. You see, biology creates the body, but it is God who creates the soul and puts it into it. So in that sense, we have not created anything. That's why in Hinduism they say, think of these children as God's children, put into your trust. You are trustees, as it were, you see. You are to look after them, help them to develop to their capacity, promote their welfare, well-being, and help them to evolve into the higher life. This is what parenting should really mean in a spiritual context.
You were talking about children. We all have relationships with children, families, spouses, so forth. How does love fit in with that?
Love, as we understand it in the normal human way, is a very limited concept. Love of husband for the wife and wife for the husband, filial love for the parents, parental love for the children, and that's about it. The rest is all friendship. In spirituality, we have what is called universal love, which is not a personalized love for a person, but a love which flows from the heart without let or hindrance, as they say in legal parlance, you see. It flows because it must flow. Like honey flows out of a honeycomb when it is full. Or like milk flows from the udder of a cow, it has no more control than we have. At this stage, there is no particular person towards whom my love is aimed or directed. It flows. And like the sun, which shines in all directions, this love goes in all directions. It also embraces these personal loves like filial love, brotherly love, sisterly love, because they are part of the universal love. Now we are dealing only with the part and not with the whole. So spiritual love is a holistic concept. Human love is at best a selfish relationship between two people, whether friends, husband and wife, father and children, things like that, you see. It's a limited concept. So from the limited, we go to the infinite universal.
That seems to also grow from the idea of evolving spiritually, that we evolve into the whole.
Exactly. We have to become capable of such a love, you see.
In the course of our lives, we're always looking for purpose in everything that we do. Is spirituality that purpose that we should be looking for?
In spirituality, as far as I have understood after 30 years of practice, there is a goal but not a purpose.
Okay.
The goal is the evolutionary goal that we have to become what we have to become. Spirituality says we are born as human beings, but we have a lot of tendencies which are not human. We refer to them as animal tendencies, but I think that is being unfair to the animals, because animals don't have tendencies as such. They only react to situations. They don't think and do. You see, the whole idea of doership, that I am responsible for this act, is in the human being. In the animal, it doesn't exist. When a tiger kills a bullock and eats it, it has no sense of guilt. It is just fulfilling its natural need to eat. But when a human being kills, even with the highest patriotic motives, there is an element of guilt left. Is patriotism sufficient reason for me to kill another human being just because he is on the other side of an arbitrary line that I have drawn? Friends this side, enemies that side. So you see, this sort of thing we have to think deeply about, that when we think of a purpose, again the self-interest would do it, the lower self, my purpose, my country's purpose. But when we think of an evolutionary goal as such, it is common to all human beings. Therefore, I must not hesitate in saying that patriotism is a limited value. You are patriotic to your society, somebody else is patriotic to his society. But when I have a transcendental goal, and we offer this to human beings everywhere, the human beings are actually united in a common pursuit of a goal, not a purpose. A purpose is defined as, something which is at the end of a sequential series of activities. Today my purpose is to go from here to New York, let us say. But what do I do there? So goal is different from a purpose. I mean, in my understanding, maybe my English is faulty, I could have explained it better, but spirituality does not define different individual purposes of different human beings. Spirituality says all human beings have the same goal or destination. Purpose is individual.
Okay.
So in a sense, purpose divides human beings, a goal unites human beings. And in this context, I might add to Mr. Kirby's first question, religions also divide us, spirituality unites.
How can we bring spirituality into our lives?
First, it is difficult, if you want to change your dress, you have to undress first and then put on the new dress, isn't it? Similarly, if you want to become spiritual, you have to leave certain things before you can become spiritual. Instead of saying we have to leave or give up, which sound in a sense, like making a sacrifice or doing without something, we say transcend. Now, religion is, according to the teachings of my master, only the kindergarten school for inculcating in human beings some, preliminary idea of God. A very sort of intangible idea of God. Something very rudimentary. That there is a creator, he is God, we should worship him, we should love him, etc. And it is also a school, or supposed to be a school, to introduce us to the idea of ethics and morality. The function of religion stops there. In all religions, this is without bias to any religion. In all religions it's the same. See, religious instruction means a certain basic moral instruction, a certain basic introduction to the idea that there is a God, but it does not tell us anything more. In religion, there is no direct experience of God. I don't think, even so-called saints have had a direct experience of God. No, Moses is supposed to have had a direct experience of God. But he comes with fear in his face, as he is depicted in this famous picture, Moses, which came out some years ago. Spirituality says we can never see God because God has no form, no name, no attributes. So he cannot be seen, he cannot be known. The way I know you and the other questioner here are by your attributes. One is male, one is female, one is tall, one is medium height. One is wearing a jacket, the other is not. She is wearing a skirt. We distinguish between people by their attributes. A name is an attribute. No, God cannot have a name. God cannot have a form, because if he has a form and the form falls off, can we say God is dead? God cannot die, God cannot be born. In every religion we say, he was, he is, and he shall ever be, eternal. But in religion they teach us of a God who has come down to us. Like in Hinduism we have the avatars, Rama, Krishna and so on. In Christianity you have the Son of God who is the representative of God on earth. And now after Christ we have his representatives who are the popes in the Catholic tradition. How many of them have had the direct experience of God, a revelation? Or is it just that, we induce in ourselves a particular euphoric state and think we have experienced God? For instance, I'm often hearing in Europe especially, about religious paintings, religious music. Now what does religious painting mean? I have no idea. Just by making a picture which you think is God, can you call it a religious painting? Just by singing something which we call church music, does it become divine music? So you see, we have to be careful about the terminology that we use. To me, divine music comes when we sing with a divine consciousness. The subject may not be God at all, but the divinity in the voice, in the way that the song comes out of me, through the creative forces flowing through me, makes it divine.
We're glad you could join us for today's program. The current spiritual guide of Sahaj Marg, Parthasarathi Rajagopalachari, simply known as Chari, lives in Madras, India. He works to facilitate the spiritual evolution of human beings to the highest possible level. With the active assistance of this spiritual master, Sahaj Marg is practiced today by more than 100,000 people in over 60 countries.
The idea of a spiritual master is often a difficult concept for Americans. A spiritual master is one who has mastered himself and has traveled the road of spirituality. This puts him in a position to effectively guide us towards our spiritual goal. Each one of us is unique and has different needs, and the master gives selflessly with unconditional love for the benefit of all humanity.
Sahaj Marg is a simplified form of Raja Yoga, or yoga of the mind. Just as a bird needs two wings to fly, this practice provides a balance between our material and spiritual lives. Sahaj Marg means natural path. It is a way of life which teaches through direct experience. It uses simple methods and the active support of the guide through the use of what is called spiritual transmission. This transmission, or pranahuti, is the central feature of Sahaj Marg. Basically, transmission is the utilization of divine energy for the spiritual transformation of man. Lost for thousands of years, transmission was rediscovered by the founders of Sahaj Marg.
The daily practice of Sahaj Marg involves a simple heart-based meditation in the morning, a cleaning technique at the end of the day, and a few other simple methods aimed at rapid spiritual growth.
From the moment we're born, everything we take in through our senses leaves an impression on us. Our soul, which is the eternal pure essence inside us, begins to identify with these impressions, and they become solidified and add complexities, tendencies, and habits to our lives. Over time, this greatly influences and conditions who we are and what we become, and covers over the divinity in the heart of each of us. The cleaning in Sahaj Marg is essential. It facilitates the removal of our past impressions and accumulations, greatly accelerating our spiritual progress. The cleaning in Sahaj Marg gently removes these impressions, allowing us to once again experience the soul's original and pure condition. In this way, a person can rapidly evolve spiritually.
Part of the practice of Sahaj Marg involves receiving regular individual sittings with a preceptor. A session of meditation with a preceptor is called a sitting. A sitting typically lasts from 30 to 60 minutes. A preceptor is a person who has been prepared by the spiritual master to act as a conduit for the transmission. This transmission greatly accelerates our spiritual growth. Group sittings in which meditators sit together with Chari or a preceptor and receive transmission forms another important part of the practice.
There are no fees of any kind involved. Spirituality cannot be sold. The only qualification needed to begin Sahaj Marg meditation is willingness. The practice of Sahaj Marg can be started by anyone at least 18 years old by obtaining several introductory sittings from a preceptor. After this, the daily practice begins and consists of morning meditation, evening cleaning, a short prayer at bedtime, regular individual sittings from a preceptor, and weekly group sittings.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you found the program useful.